Good morning to all of you about yesterday's visit with the Commission on Higher Education, which took place up at Lowry, the old Air Force Base, where Community College of Denver, the system of the community colleges, is headquartered there, and also Community College of Aurora have facilities there. And we were down the list, and it was Susan, I think, one of her first commission meetings, and Gary and I, and actually we had support from Vice President Ballard and Teresa Osborne from the system office. So we were there in force, and we had already had kind of some informal meetings, but our master plan that many of you participated in, Carol and Gary and lots of folks on the campus, it was evident to the commission that there was a lot of thought and work in that master plan document. We even put in the document some of the student comments about concern about growth. We put in the document about concerns from neighbors. I mean, it was very much an abridging of the entire process, and they were very impressed that we were willing to show not just the go get it done, but the ones that were concerned about how we get it done. So I would just say that the comments that I'd like to share with you from Lieutenant Governor Garcia, who, as you know, used to be at CSU Pueblo and Pikes Peak Community College before, and now heads higher ed in addition to being Lieutenant Governor. The comments we got from the commission and from Lieutenant Governor Garcia were just kind of gave you chills to sit there and represent all of you, because they were extremely impressed with the thoughtfulness of the plan, where this campus is. One of the commissioners taught on this campus in the late 70s and has seen the campus since. And the big question was, how are you all growing when the rest of the state is not growing? And what are the things you think are, and I didn't want to give out all of our great secrets, but I said I think we have a great culture where students are welcomed and we're a very student-centered campus. And so that's a tribute to everyone in this room and everyone who can't be here today. So I just want to say it was a pleasure to represent the commission. It was one of the easier unanimous votes we've gotten, but it does, and it's a 10-year approval. So we don't have to master plan this campus till 2022, which I'm sure we'll all breathe a sigh of relief. Now we just have to go fill in the blanks and get it done. So it was great yesterday, and thank you for everyone who contributed to that. The budget we'll talk about. This is better news. We've done these forums for a number of years, and it's probably one of the more optimistic and hopeful forums we've been able to craft for you. So hopefully you'll feel the same way. Whoops, I already pushed the wrong button. Just a little background to maybe not everyone works with these numbers all day like the Resource Management Office, and also I need to say as I start, thank you to Gayanne and Suzanne in the office for helping put this together. But our all funds budget, you should know, we started July 1st at $171 million, and there's really three buckets that we work with. The general fund, which is where our tuition and our state support, and that's kind of your unrestricted. Some schools call that E&G, or education and general administrative expenses. We just call it the general fund. That's $98.9 million, and that's really what pays for the lion's share of what we do on our campus. The auxiliary fund is up to $36.9 million, which is also an all-time high. Those are the businesses we run. That's extended studies in academic affairs, but it's also the housing village, the bookstore, the university center, all of the auxiliaries, the family development center. Those are all in the auxiliaries. Then the restricted fund is also growing. Those are funds where the person who's given us the money or the organization has a restriction on how we use it. That'd be financial aid, that'd be gifts, right? Contracts and grants from the federal government to do specific research projects. That all sits down in the red bucket, and we denote it with red ink because we want to be really careful with the restricted funds. So that's the entire budget as we started the year. The most important one for us in managing this budget and how we fund our educational enterprise is obviously our general fund. And to the Chancellor's point earlier, you can see how important enrollment is to our changing landscape. We showed the University Budget Advisory Committee earlier this year how this source of general fund has evolved over the last 10 to 12 years, where it used to be we'd get $1 of state support for a $1 of tuition. That's not just 12 years ago in this campus's history. If you look today, we're planning on bringing in all $60.4 million of people from the state of Colorado paying us tuition. Non-resident tuition, $14.1 million is where we began the year. And student fees, and you can see the state support are down here in these two buckets here, 10.86. So about $17 million coming from the state, while we're bringing in nearly $75 million in tuition when we started the year. So you can see how tuition dependent we've become and why enrollment matters. And to the Chancellor's point, why retention of students we worked hard to recruit here matters to the financial future of this campus. It's really illustrated right here. Our F&A, or the overhead we get on our grants, that comes in and helps reimburse the general fund. It's a small piece, as you can see, 1.3 million out of 98.9 million. But we need to grow that as well as we diversify our revenues. And we've done a good job of diversifying revenues. How we use our general fund, really, this is a people business. This is a labor-intensive, it's a labor-intensive business when you put faculty, staff, working with students. And you can see this is true, this would be true for any college or university in the country. This is true at School District 11 or School District 20. It looks a lot like this. Student aid is at an all-time high. That piece of the pie has really grown as we've raised tuition. We've tried to keep it affordable for those students who can't pay. Library materials we call out, utilities we call out. Probably a newer piece of the pie in the last 10 years is general fund debt service. A lot of peers of ours don't have general fund debt service because their state funds general fund buildings like office buildings and academic buildings. Our state right now is not funding office buildings or academic buildings. We've had to do it. So that $3.1 million is helping us do the debt service on the Osborne Center for Science and Engineering and now the Lane Center for Academic Health Sciences as we bring that up. The inter-campus cost allocation, this may be review for some of you, but some of you are newer to the campus. The ICCA, we pay $3.2 million to be a part of the CU system. And that is a lot of money. We pay about 8% of the system's cost. Denver and Boulder pay the other 92%. And what that does is that funds payroll and benefits, the Procurement Service Center, the President's Office, all those things at 1,800 grant. So that's how our system's built. You know, we don't have procurement on this campus. We don't have payroll on this campus. Those are all centralized, and that's our share of those costs. And actually, in fairness to President Benson, when things have been tight, the system has really worked hard to try and keep the costs of the system down. They've made cuts. They've laid people off. And I will tell you that the big piece of that, 40% of that is information technology. That's UIS, that's our backbone, that's our internet, that's our email systems, all that stuff that connects us to our students and among the campuses is 40% of that number is going straight into technology. Okay, that's 40% of the system budget. And then finally operating, that's where our operating and travel is. So that's how our budget's constructed. Just kind of a history of support, and I see a lot of long-time campus employees, so this should be review for you as well. But for newer employees, you can see that it's been an up and down, and if we went back even further, you'd see even more up and down. We are starting to recover and stabilize from where we were, and as you know, we've grown so much since 03-04. In fact, we've grown by around 30%, that on a per-student basis, we've really dropped the state support of our students. And so this is important to understand that while we're pleased that we're staying at around $17 million on a per-student basis, we're way behind where we were 10 years ago. And that's why there's so much pressure on tuition, and in turn pressure on recruiting, getting enrollment in, and retaining the students we bring here who can compete academically. So what's happening so far? Some bad news at the top of the slide that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. We were off in summer enrollment. We had planned to grow, and we were down 0.3%. That is not okay, because what it means is it starts, the fiscal year that starts on July 1, we actually started below budget. That 171 million, we were actually trying to catch up. The good news is we hit 5.5 this fall, which will fill some of that. A lot depends on the spring, and so that's why we watch spring enrollment right now, and so far so good, but spring enrollment matters to us. The other good news, as we move to good news, it's a stable outlook for state revenues. We were quite worried about the summer fire season, not just the fires here in Colorado Springs, but statewide, what that might have done to tourism revenues. It appears it didn't have the effect we thought it might, and that state revenues appear to be stabilizing. Obviously, the federal fiscal cliff issues could have huge impacts to the Colorado economy, so that's another little headwind we're worried about right now. Credit hours are slightly over original target for fall. That's helping us fill a hole we started in the summer. Right? So we've got to make ground up there. And the other good news in this bullet is we are over budget on out-of-state and students in the Western Undergraduate Exchange Program. We're actually a little under budget on resident students. So as we look at that, we actually grew this fall, resident tuition grew by 4.2% when our goal was 5%. So that's a little bit of a concern for us because as you can see from that pie chart, resident undergraduate students is where our bread and butter is. That's where most of our tuition comes from. So that didn't make target, and that's something we're paying attention to as we think about recruiting and retention for next year. Spring enrollment is encouraging, as I said, this far. As far enrollment is looking strong for spring. All our investment funding that we laid out in the spring budget forums has been executed as planned, and we're bringing back, actually at the request of several units on the campus, we were in a more systemic way of doing budget reviews in January after 5 years when we were just trying to keep everything going. And those are open. We'll publish that schedule. It'll take us about 2 days. As I recall, we got the end of January, early February. It'll be in Dwyer 204, the Hahn Community Room. And those are open if you want to come learn or sit in on a session. Those are not closed meetings. Those are the campuses, the college, the units on our campus will be coming in and talking with the leadership team about their budget challenges, their needs, how they finished last year, and what we're looking at heading into next year. So everyone's invited if you're interested to see a portion of that budget process. Looking ahead for the fiscal year that starts next July 1st, you may have read about this in the paper. The governor released his budget request on November 1st, which he's required to do each year under the law. Big news right there, recommended no cuts to higher education. Actually an increase of $30 million to the governing boards of the state. CU's share of that, the president has already agreed, CU's share of that would be $9 million. Our share, which we get to now negotiate, Susan and I get to go up and get to negotiate with the system, will be around $800,000 to $1 million. We're about 11% of the governing board budget. I will tell you that they're concerned that the state may not be able to sustain this additional money. So there's going to be quite a discussion with the board about whether we consider this base and use it for base expenses, or we take this additional state money and use it on one-time expenditures and not bake it into our base budget so it doesn't create a hole down the road. That's going to be determined over the next 60 to 90 days with the Board of Regents. The other some good news is the governor recommended an increase of $5 million for state-based financial aid. It's all need-based. You should know that there is no merit-based aid left in state government. That's all been wiped out of the budget. But in need-based aid, they're recommending a $5 million increase, and the reason I can't tell you what that might mean for us, because right now we get about $3 million of state financial aid of the pie that's about $90 million. There's a number of models that were actually being discussed later on the calendar yesterday with the commission, and there's quite a bit of disagreement among the governing boards about how to allocate the $5 million. Some of the high enrollment growth places outside of CU really want to reward enrollment growth. There's some models that cut graduate aid, which we would actually be opposed to. So it's just too early to give you any update on what new state financial aid might be coming to the campus. The governor also proposed to increase the state reserve to 5% from 4%. That shows you how healthy it's getting. I remember when the reserve, they were cut to 3% and 2% and 1% when we were really in the downturn. So the governor believes the 4% reserve, and that's about an $80 million decision. To a 1% increase in the reserve would mean you wouldn't spend $80 million, you'd put it in reserve. That's going to be an interesting discussion with the legislature. And then probably the best news on this whole page, I think, for particularly our classified employees here and across the state, is the governor recommended a total of about a 3% increase between cost of living and merit for our classified staff, which would be the first increase in 4 years. And it's tremendously overdue. I would also say that our system and our president advocated that we needed to do something about the classified staff, not just at CU, but across the state. And we're pleased that that's in the budget, and we'll be planning for that. And I believe that part will go through. It's too early to tell. The legislature hasn't even been seated or convened yet, but I believe that piece will go through with the state recovering. What that does mean, too, is I do believe we'll be able to discuss a merit pool again this year for our faculty and our exempt professionals, because we'll advocate that if we're going to help the classified staff recover, we need to keep our faculty salaries competitive as well as our administrative salaries. So I believe we will construct a budget with the Regent's approval, as I stand here today, that will include raises come July 1st of next year. The governor's office also requested $44 million for controlled maintenance, and while that's great for the campuses and the buildings that are older on the state, we're kind of a campus with newer buildings, which is a good thing in a lot of ways, but no state capital construction money. So things that we have on the list, like our Visual and Performing Arts Center, maybe another classroom building, potentially other things that we would be eligible for, there's no state money for any of that. So that's kind of I guess we kind of started with the downer and kind of end with the downer. All the stuff in the middle is pretty good. How's that? So I'm happy at this point to take some questions on the budget, on the raises issue, and then what we were planning with this forum, as the Chancellor said, was then to turn it over to a discussion on the general education, where we sit with the changes with the campus. So questions about the budget or where we're heading financially this year or next? Oh, somebody has to have a question. All right, I'm going to do the Chancellor thing, call on somebody. Ron.
Well, I'm just a little bit curious as to where your information about the impact of the fires this summer came from. Because I still think it has had a lot more impact than what has shown up yet.
Well, the state does quarterly revenue forecasts in September, December, March, and June. So the fires really start hitting in June. So we were nervous in the September forecast about what the state revenues look like, because that was what the governor built his November budget request on. And a bit surprising to me, the revenues were still strong. So it's not something that they take a once-a-year snapshot at. They actually look at this every quarter, both the legislative offices and the governor's budget office. And what it showed was, despite the challenges of the fire, and I don't know that all the final story's been told, but it didn't have the impact that we saw in 2001 when the Hayman fire really put a dent in tourism for an extended period, the summer of 2002, as I recall that was. So we were guarded for that. The good news was, in the September forecast, they were able to build a budget that put more money into higher education, didn't keep us flat or cut us, because the summer tourism revenue, the tax revenues were still coming in at a level that weren't apparently impacted in a great degree by the summer fire season. So I agree with you. I don't think the final story's been told, but right now, from a state revenue perspective, it does not appear to be affecting the state's recovery. Chancellor?
Brian, I think we need to be watching the route relative to winter tourism and spring, summer agriculture.
Right. Chancellor, you know, Chancellor raises a really good point. Not only is the ski season imperiled, if you've read about Monarch Mountain not being able to open at present, hopefully this weekend some of that will get addressed in a small way. But our people we work with at Colorado Springs Utilities, they're very nervous about the level of the reservoirs and the water storage for the city, maybe some as low as 30% heading into this winter. And if we don't get some changes in weather patterns, Chancellor's exactly right. We could have challenges in tourism around ski revenues, snowboarding revenues, and we could have challenges with agriculture, even having water and whether fields dry up, and the whole agricultural industry, which is still a major, major portion of the Colorado economy, could be imperiled. So I think there's some still headwinds, right? We might be past, hopefully, our worst fires we've seen for a while, but there's still headwinds climate-wise, and there's still headwinds on the fiscal side if Congress and the President can't work out this fiscal cliff issue and sequestration begins to hit. You know, the El Paso County economy is very much dependent on the military. The 40% of our economy is coming from the Defense Department. So that could be, those are things we have to watch. I think we can still plan effectively. This is not a robust business plan where we think we're back in the heyday. I would submit a 3% salary pool, a 3% classified pool is modest, given that inflation's around 2 to 3%. So it's not robust, but I do think it's a slow path to recovery. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yeah, just the past summer has just been a revelation to me about how dependent the entire state is with the tourism business.
It's really important. Yeah, it's a really good point. And you're already starting to see some bookings going away in the snow industry. If they don't get some snow soon, that could really affect it. That's why they check revenues every quarter. Okay. Other questions? Al?
We're the campus who increased enrollment this year.
Yes.
The other city. And
by and large, yes.
Yeah. Well, you're saying you presented from the CCHE and didn't give away all our secrets about growth. But what do you think it is about us that lets us do this and the other folks aren't increasing?
Well, I have a number of anecdotal things that I think are going on. I think we have some of the most tremendous staff and faculty on any campus, because I've talked to a number of transfer students, and actually I've talked to some freshmen. Some of you know I taught a freshman seminar class this fall, and when you talk to them about how's it going and what do you like and what do you not like, the thing I hear repeatedly is the people on this campus are so nice and try to help you. And I think that's a spirit that's been years in the making, decades in the making, and it continues to be part of who we are. I also think, Al, we have a very attractive campus, and our small class sizes compared to these 500, 600 seat classrooms that still exist at Boulder and Fort Collins and Greeley is a true differentiator for us, right? You come here, you get a lot more faculty interaction. And I think that that's something we do stress in the recruitment process, but it comes to life, and then students tell other students and tell friends back at their high school, you ought to come look at UCCS. I think that's part of it. I think the grounds have come a long way where this campus it feels good to be on this campus, right? From both the human perspective and the physical perspective. And I would just say I think a lot of nice things are happening around us. You know, I'm biased, but University Village, I think, has made a difference to the edge of the campus, both in jobs, places to go eat, to socialize with your students. Go down to Panera during finals and see if you can find a seat, because it's mostly students studying for finals, and that's part of why they had to expand Panera. It's great. So I think there's a lot of good things happening, but I think it starts with our people, which is why the Chancellor and I work hard with the regents to say we need to take care of our people. Should we take care of our buildings? Absolutely. But it's the things that happen inside those buildings that make us special. That's what I would say.
Do you think we're having more of an impact on these potential out-of-state students, since that the money from them seems to be bigger than the money we're getting from the tuition from in-state? At least we're not meeting our goal in in-state.
Well, clearly the deltas this fall, as I said before, we grew our in-state undergrad student tuition by 4.2. We're well above that in non-residents. So yes, we're having some very good results in California and other states, and we need to understand how that's happening for us. I do think adding more housing, like the 192 beds that we have under construction right now, makes it possible so that we don't lose students from out of state, because parents would be reluctant to send them to UCCS if they couldn't live on campus their first year. That's a big deal, but we've got to get those beds open and do that. And that's part of the reason we added Sunset Creek this year, was to make sure we didn't lose enrollment. We may still have lost enrollment given those constraints. So part of it is us catching up with being able to be competitive with out of state, with other schools that look like us, and having enough capacity of housing to make sure we can meet the demand from those out of state students. But I think we're on the right path there. And quite frankly, Susan and I and Gary are working on what's the next housing village look like and how can we put it up? Because I don't think we're going to be there when we get to 1,100 beds next August with the 2 new towers in Summit Village. Does that help? Other questions? Amy?
So I wonder, with the inter-campus cost allocation,
Yes.
are they going to just keep it low for us? And like, how, do you have any idea, like, at what point you're like, no, you guys can start making it?
Well, we look at that every 2 years,
Okay.
and we went from 7 to 8% a couple years ago. We've been fairly successful at staying at 8, but I hear that they want to relook at it this year. And that is one of the challenges. As we become a bigger part of the system, we get to help share in a bigger part of the overhead. So we have to think about that as well as we put a budget together. What I would say, it's not just about the number of students we have, it's the number of transactions taking place. And all that research enterprise at Boulder and Denver, which is substantially larger than ours, drives a lot of overhead in terms of procurement, in terms of legal, that type of thing. So there's multiple pieces to the metrics. It's just not our share of the student population. It's also the transactions we have on ISIS, right? Now so yes, over time, we should expect to pay more of the system overhead as we become a bigger piece of the system. But we will be fighting to make sure it stays as low as possible so that we can spend our money on this campus. Fair? Okay. Other questions on the budget? Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, thank you for your time and attention to this. I'll turn it over to Interim Provost David Moon to talk about where we are at on general education. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian, and I think I get to continue the good news segment of the program. I hope you all saw it in communique or on the email that went to Faculty L, but we did in fact pass a new structure for general education last week, so voting opened on Monday and finished on Friday, and there are about 420 members of the faculty assembly, so all the tenure track and full-time non-tenure track faculty, and 198 of them voted. It's about 47%. And of those, 166, about 84%, voted in favor of adopting this new structure. So we certainly have a mandate for moving forward. And literally, I have a mandate that is in the wording of the initiative. It said that the provost is charged with implementing this new structure. And so I'll be talking a little bit about how I plan to go about that. But before I get to that, I want to acknowledge the effort that it took, not just to get the vote to pass, that was important and we had to do that, but it was much more important that faculty really believe in the structure as a way to really achieve their goals. And that was a two-part process. So we had roughly 2 years ago a vote to adopt new goals for general education, and that took about 1.5 years to get to that vote. And it really was a campus-wide effort among faculty, and there were multiple forums and lots of ways for faculty to have input, so that we adopted something in terms of what we wanted for our students that our faculty believed in, and that then created the mandate to figure out how we were going to do that on a campus-wide basis. And that's really what we've been doing for the last roughly 2 years. And that has also involved lots of consultation with the faculty. And so what I want to do before I start talking about going on to the next phase is to recognize a couple of people who really, in the second phase, made that happen, really made it happen, not just that we got something created and not just that we got it passed, but created something that faculty really are enthusiastic about, that they believe in, and that I think in lots of ways are excited about going on to this next phase of implementation. So I'm going to ask Jeff Ferguson and Christina Jimenez to come up for just a second, just say a few words, and let's all congratulate them for...
Thank you. Well, we didn't really prepare very much this morning. We had our last...
We're done. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. We had our last Phase 2 GE Task Force meeting yesterday afternoon, and it was really, a celebration as well as a lot of enthusiasm for moving on to the next phase. For those of you who aren't aware, the campus-wide GE curriculum that the faculty just approved will be our first campus-wide GE curriculum at UCCS. So before this, each of the colleges had their own GE curricula, and we feel like this is going to be a great thing for our students, for student learning, and of course for faculty collaborations across the colleges. We really focus on creating intentionality, not just within each given course, but between all of the different courses in the curriculum. And the faculty liked it. So we felt like that was a real validation of the work we had been doing and the process that we had spearheaded. Want to add something?
I guess so. Cue the PowerPoints. No. You can still go on the Provost website and get the PowerPoint archives of every gruesome step of the way, should you want to do that. But seriously, this has really been an exciting experience for me because of the people that I've gotten to work with, mostly Christina. She's going to be glad to have me out of her life now, I'm sure. But the excitement within the faculty and the passion and commitment at every step of the way was really inspiring. I didn't think when Peg asked me to be on this Gen Ed curriculum review with 25 people on this committee that, wow, this is going to be exciting. But it turned out to be very exciting and very stimulating and very rewarding. And this is not about Christina and I, or not even about our committee. It's about really what happened on this campus to really come together to do stuff that's really good for kids. And when you're talking about the importance of retention and getting people here, I think this is going to be a great jumping off spot for the next level of greatness for UCCF. So I'm proud to have been a part of that. Thank you.
And the celebration's not over, because I had a little something just for the committee already, but we really haven't had a chance for people to come together and celebrate this achievement. And it really is an achievement on the part of the campuses. As they said, it's the first time we've ever done this. So on January 23rd, we're going to wait till classes start again, so we'll have everybody here and not having to miss any finals and all of those kinds of things. But on January 23rd at 3:30 in the library apps, we'll have a campus-wide celebration. And I hope that all of you have a chance to come. I'm going to really work hard to get all the members of both of the first phase task forces to come so we can do a little bit of a general recognition of all of that work, and it really was 4 years worth of effort. And then hopefully by then I'll know a little bit more than I'm going to be able to tell you today about what phase 3 will look like. So let me tell you what I think I do know about phase 3, and then I want to ask for your help in filling in the gaps about what phase 3 will end up looking like. So here's what I know. If we wanted to launch in fall of 2014, which is the first realistic opportunity to do that, we would need to know how we want to change our catalog requirements in about a year. That is, by February of 2014. So that's what I'm going to frame for whoever we bring together to start working. I hope to do that in February. So they'd have about a year. And beyond that, there would still be plenty of work to do. So probably for about another year beyond that, this group would work in actually getting the courses up and running and launched and all of the agreements put together about how faculty were going to interact with each other and all the faculty development and the governance structure, and there's a whole long list. What I will say is different than the first two phases. So if you think back to the goals, right? They started with a blank sheet of paper. And they had to spend a lot of time looking at what other people do and all of the past history and all of the things that people thought about what our students ought to know and be able to do. And the next phase, phase 2, that Jeff and Christina led, started out with a blank sheet of paper, except at the top it had the goals, right? And all they knew was they were supposed to figure out what kind of a curriculum would allow our campus to achieve or have our students achieve those goals. Well, now that sheet's filled out, right? And almost all the questions, at least the majority of the questions that we're going to need to answer to be able to do that have been identified by the phase 2 group. So I'm hoping we'll be able to start up a little faster than the first two groups who really had to do a lot of research, a lot of talking to people. A lot of that talking to has already happened. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to move on and really capture the momentum that's been developed in these first two phases. So that's my vision of the thing. I talked to the committee at some length yesterday about what they thought this new process ought to look like and how many people ought to be on it and all those kinds of things. And what I'm going to ask the campus at large, and I'll send out an email probably later today to the faculty at large, at least, that I really would like to hear from people, both about their general ideas of what we need to do next, but especially nominating people who might be good choices for the co-chairs. Because I really think that it's difficult for anybody sitting in my seat to know all the people out there who are doing great work, who have, a real passion for this, and who are ready at this point in their careers to take on this very important contribution to make to the campus. And so if I have a little bit broader sense of who all those people might be, I think I'll do a better job of making some good choices there. And then I also am going to be trying to figure out, based on the committee's input, how big a committee and how to compose the committee and all those things. My goal, and I'm not promising that I'll make it, but my goal would be to be able to say a little bit more about that at the event on January 23rd. Probably at least the co-chairs. That's cross my fingers on that one. So I'm ready to take any questions anybody has about what we've done or where I think we're headed. No? I'm going to have to call on somebody? Brian did? Well, yes, Al.
Okay. Is our plan unique, or is it, when you look at it, is it similar to other stuff that's out there?
So our plan is in fact unique, but the identifying characteristics, the things that really make it unique, are probably not, it's not as if those are nowhere else in the world. The thing that's probably the most distinctive is the junior level course that is built around the notion, we're calling it the advanced core. It would be a course that everybody would take even if they transfer in with 60 hours or more. In other words, they've done all their general education at some other place. This would still be a requirement for all of those students. And the core idea of that is knowledge in action. That is, knowledge that they've gathered, and how do they apply that? How do they work together with other people? How do they take on a project? So certainly there are places around the country that's in their curriculum. But in combination with all the other things, we'll be reorienting our freshman seminar into a gateway course that, again, in and of itself is not unique. But as Christina mentioned, it's really the integration, right? It's getting from coming in the gateway, coming in that beginning of your college career, and moving all the way through to the capstone experience that I think really distinguishes this from other attempts at other campuses to do similar things.
So is this a program that is coupled with a degree program, and then, or
So-
what kind of students are?
So right now today, so it's all undergraduates, right? It's not anybody who's a graduate student. Right now today, we have 5 general education programs. Some things are shared. About 22 hours currently are similar, at least, across the 5 undergraduate colleges that have undergraduate programs. So that's about what we've got. And some of those things we've maintained pretty much like they are. And others we've changed or added or oriented to really capture the new goals and to integrate, to have the courses relate to each other better than they have in the past. And so we've gone from about 22 hours in common to 24. It's not in that sense a huge change. But in the sense of we have thought about the connection between what we ask our students to actually do, to the courses we ask them to take, and what we hope that they will learn from that. That, I think, is the big change. And so at one level, 22 to 24, not that big a deal. But it's not even a huge change in which 22 and 24 credits. It's more how we're going to go about organizing those courses and bringing them together. So that's the students. And so incoming freshmen will take all 24 hours. Students who come to us as transfers with their general education completed will only have somewhere in the 6 to 7 hour range that they'll take with us. But they will still get that, which right now, for the most part, doesn't happen. Any other questions? Yeah.
Was there any specific address to courses that might be socially responsible in their focus? For
Yes.
example, some universities you have to take a personal wellness course on healthy, activity. Some feedback, from a lot of our student employees is that they just don't know how to handle their fiscal, responsibility as a college student. Was there some of that involved?
So this goes all the way back to setting our goals. So there are 3 general areas in our goals, and one of those we call act and interact. So the ways in which people act out in the world and how they interact with other people. And let me see if I can do this. So we've got inclusiveness, we've got sustainability, we've got engagement, and we've got responsibility. Now the definitions of those in the goals leave room for interpretation. So what we've done is, in the structure, is to build opportunities for faculty to address those. So for example, in freshman seminar, that'll become the gateway, we've already said that while they haven't figured out exactly what it's going to look like yet, that responsibility will be one of the elements that every single one of the gateway courses will contain. And you know, there's lots of contenders for what that means. So I can't tell you for sure that we're going to teach everybody how to balance their checkbook, right? But there will be an element of responsibility. I'm pretty sure that it will include academic responsibility, right? But the other elements, I think, it's still on the table, and that's what the phase 3 is going to be about, is what's the right balance between what you want to do in the first course and what you want to do in the last course.
Well, you mentioned if professional schools contribute to Explore.
Okay, so there's some other opportunities to build that in. So responsibility we hope to have sort of woven through a variety of courses. We have specific places where we'll have sustainability and inclusiveness addressed, and we hope that the engagement is at least directly addressed in the advanced core, and probably in a lot of other places too. But one of the things that will be a change that we, again, phase 3 will be trying to figure out, is in the past, arts and sciences has taken the bulk of the duty in sort of meaning what's inside arts and sciences has been called the area requirements. Well, our Explore curriculum, which is smaller than the current arts and sciences curriculum, but is mirrored in various ways in the other colleges, those areas will really be opened up, and other colleges besides arts and sciences will be offering courses there, and it's perfectly possible that that's going to open more opportunities for those. So you can imagine a health sciences course that would address, you know, health and wellness kinds of issues. You can imagine a business course that talked about, you know, how do you chart your, you know, how do you act in a fiscally responsible manner, and so I can't predict exactly how all that will play out, and I can promise that not everything everybody wants to do is going to happen in 24 credit hours, right? But all of those things are going to be on the table for phase 3, and I'm going to have them do it in 18. No. So we've got our work cut out for us. Okay, thank you very much. I think we're done.